Welcome back to Bird in the Haystack with Josh and Jesse.
I'm Jesse.
And I'm Josh.
And this is a show all about saving the best and burning the rest.
It sure is. And today, we are coming at you live from my couch and Jesse's office.
Yes, my office. Welcome to my office. You'll notice these $1 million paintings in the background, but you know what's more important than that? The books in this shelf because of knowledge. Yes.
Knowledge. Oh, man. Have you ever seen any of those? This isn't my question of the week, but just have you ever seen those like the daily habits of a rich person videos where it's like, here's my morning routine, and it's
do these 7 things and you will be a billionaire just like me.
Yeah.
Half of them end up being like product reviews of, I use Neutrogena Skincare Plus Pro in the morning. It helps my skin to be revitalized and it makes people like me more, so I make more money.
Yeah, or it's like a sly ad for their own things, like wear these t-shirts that I wear and I make.
Yeah.
You can't be a billionaire without it.
Or it's like, this is the protein powder that I use. Use coupon code blah 2020 for 10% off your coupon for your protein shake. I don't know. I don't do protein shakes. Is that obvious? That's not too obvious, is it?
Don't know. I don't do protein shakes either.
True. Well, you actually go to the gym. Why don't you use protein?
Just can't be bothered paying for it. Okay. So, if I got it, I'd have to get vegan protein, which is substantially more expensive than regular protein. So
can you get soy protein?
Yeah, you can, but it's more expensive than regular protein. Because all protein is made of like whey and whey powder. Okay, there'll be some gym person out there who knows way more about this, who's probably correcting me as they're listening to this. Generally, most proteins are made of whey and whey powder. If I had to buy it, I'd have to get like dairy-free stuff, like totally dairy-free, like not even any whey in it, and it's just way more expensive, and I just can't be bothered.
That's way more expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Fair enough. That makes sense. I was making a whey joke. It's
genius.
way more. Oh, it's so dumb. Karina's been outdoing me on the dad jokes recently. She's been making far more dad jokes than I have. So I'm trying to redeem myself. I'm trying to get back up there as telling the worst jokes possible. So
nice.
It's my training. It's my gym. You could say it's my gym.
The pun gym.
Yes.
All right. Anyway, today we have a great episode for you. I think. I mean, is that like a humble brag to say that? I don't know. I
think respectfully and humbly, this could very well be the greatest episode of Burn the Haystack that we've ever made. Certainly, perhaps the greatest podcast episode that the world has ever seen. I say with the utmost level of humility and respect every other podcaster out there, but I think this is the best ever. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Did I overdo that? No, I think that was pretty. I didn't overstate that, did I?
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay, no. So today we are going to be doing a subreddit review. You may have seen these on YouTube, and if you have, then this is what we're doing. But we're actually going to be reviewing a fairly, I would say, small, obscure subreddit. It's not the most. It's like what 2.1, 2.3K subs on this. And by the way, maybe we should explain what a subreddit is before.
Yeah.
Should we explain that?
Yeah. So, okay, for anybody who doesn't know, Reddit is a website where you can obviously make a profile and post things. But
it's a message board. It's a message board, essentially.
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah. Or like a question. Forum. Yeah, forum. And like it's made up of subreddits. So each subreddit is based on a particular topic or a person or something. So there's subreddits for pretty much everything. I've never found something that there wasn't a subreddit for. So like there's things from volcanoes to just pictures to funny GIFs to memes, all the way through to there's an r/Adventism subreddit, which if you're listening and you're on Reddit, you should go and join because not much is happening there. So
it has 1.3 thousand subs, so it's fairly small.
Yeah. So and there's different like political leaning ones, and there's even just entire joke subreddits like what's that one with like helicopters with arms?
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's just different helicopters, and they Photoshop arms on. And
I really like really like real life doodles. That one's a great one. Where they have a GIF of something, and then somebody like doodles a little face and arms and something on it, and they animate it. It's pretty cute.
Yeah, they're great. So both Jesse and I, we've bonded a lot over Reddit because it's something we both enjoy using.
Josh introduced me to Reddit for the first time.
Did I really?
Yeah, when you showed me. Okay, this is going back to Avondale days. This is going back to like 2012.
I did not know this.
We had a class together, and you were showing me all this random stuff while we were in class, supposed to be listening to our teacher, whoever it was. And you were showing me all this funny stuff, and I was like, "Where is this all from?" He's like, you were like, "Oh, it's just from Reddit, bro." I'm like, "I don't know what Reddit is," and so I went on Reddit and I made an account and then the rest is history.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
There you go. So, yeah. So I've been using Reddit for years. I find it because it is also very informative. Like, it's great for finding different news, but it's also great for just, like, if you're into something, finding other like-minded people and seeing their responses to things. But also, it's good for just a laugh as well. Or just very informative, different sides of life that you wouldn't normally get to see.
Yep.
And so speaking of different sides of life that you don't normally get to see, Jesse.
Okay, so in Reddit, there are a bunch of different religious subreddits. There's r/Christianity. Josh already mentioned r/Adventism. But there's also a bunch of communities that are dedicated to X ... So there is an ex-JW, an ex-Christian, ex-Mormon, and there's also an ex-Adventist subreddit. So if you want to go and check it out, you can. Just go to reddit.com/r/ex-Adventist, or you can just Google it and you'll find it. It is a fairly small sub. There's only like 2,000 subscribers. But funnily enough, it's actually double the size of the actual Adventism subreddit. So that should say something, for better or for worse.
Yeah, it's a bit, and like, to be honest, if you're going to go and check it out, just be warned. I mean, it is pretty, like, a lot of those subreddits are quite angry. Yes. You know, and that's why they start it, because they want other people to vent their anger with. Yeah. So, I mean, you need to be prepared for that, I guess, if you are wanting to check it out, but you don't need to, I guess, if you're... Yeah, to enjoy the fullness of this episode, you won't need to check it out, but it's up to you.
If you're curious, check it out. If you don't think that you can handle the toxicity, we would probably advise you to stay away. As Josh said, look, and I will say right off the bat, if you've been around Reddit for a while, you know that Reddit in general, the hive mind as it was, it kind of skews atheist a little bit, or at least distrustful of organized religion in general. So it would make sense that people who are also interested in Reddit and are ex-Adventist would probably skew a little bit to the bitter side of talking about Christianity and Adventism in general. But nonetheless, we decided to do this episode because, I don't know, it's fascinating. At least it's fascinating to me about listening to people's stories and hearing their experiences, because so many of these experiences are really diverse. And actually, having said what we've already said, there are a fair few people that I've noticed on the ex-Adventist subreddit that are not sort of super hateful towards the church, like they acknowledge the good that the church has actually done for them, whilst also acknowledging the bad. And that's kind of what we do in general as well. Like a lot of the time, you know, we are the, you know, most critical of the church, whilst also acknowledging the good stuff that the church has actually given us. So I think that's a fairly healthy tension. And so we're going to try and walk that tightrope a little bit this episode. And we're going to highlight some of the stories that we've found on the subreddit that we've found particularly amusing or interesting or just sad. So that's what this episode's going to be all about.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, little side fact, before we get into it, there are also Adventists on the ex-Adventist subreddit, but obviously they can only comment on things like because the subreddit's supposed to be about the ex-Adventist experience. So it's interesting. Not many, but there are some, and they sort of are sort of defending the faith a bit, but also just listening, which I find really interesting to see. I don't spend much time on there personally. I don't spend much time on any of the religious subreddit. Well, no, Christianity I do, and a couple of, but yeah. Anyway, that's a side point. So there is some interesting conversations in there. But before we get into that, we have something else we need to handle first. The question of the week.
I thought you wanted me to say it. I was like, what's he doing?
I was going to say if you'd start saying it, and then I'd just cut off and go.
I'll remember that for next time. Yeah, cool. What's the question of the week this week, Josh?
Question of the week is, what is your favourite native Australian animal? We're both Australian. And so I figure it's, something we've never talked about, and we'd love to hear people's opinion. But what's your favourite native Australian animal? Even if you're American and you've never actually seen one in person, what's your favourite? Just visually, for no reason. It doesn't even have to have a good reason. But
that's an easy one for me.
Really?
Yeah, so easy. My favourite native Australian animal is the kookaburra.
Really?
I love it. It's my favourite. I think it's my favourite bird, and it's my favourite Australian native. I love how it looks. I love how it sounds. It's disturbing and strange and hilarious. It's a vicious bird, to be sure. Yeah. But I had a kookaburra living outside my room when I lived at Avondale, outside of Avondale. So I had a kookaburra living outside. So it would wake me up almost every morning. And actually, there's a funny story of a kookaburra experience from just a few years ago. When I lived in New Zealand, we went over to Sydney for a conference with a couple of Kiwis, and we were staying at my brother's house in North Sydney. And if you know North Sydney, you know there's a lot of bush there. Beautiful spot. And we were basically perched outside a bushy region at his house. In the morning, we woke up to kookaburras, and all the Kiwis were absolutely terrified by the sound. They'd never heard the sound of a kookaburra before. In fact, one of them asked me, they were like, "Jesse, I didn't know that monkeys lived in Australia." Oh.
I can see how you'd get that. That kind of makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. But no, I love kookaburras, man. I love them.
That's cool. Pro tip, never ever try and hand feed a kookaburra.
They'll probably bite your finger off, I'm assuming.
They'll bite your whole hand. No matter how delicate you are with it, yeah. Not that I've done it, but I've seen enough videos of people trying to do it to know never ever try and hand feed a kookaburra.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I'm pretty torn actually. I find this really hard, but I really have always liked the platypus a lot. Yeah.
Amazing creature.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn between that and a wombat. I've always really liked wombats too. And I had this I've always had this great idea. Well, I think it's since like my early teenage years of like, if I ever got into making a comic book, and now I know I'm probably never going to do this in my life, so I'm okay if somebody steals the idea, but just at least give me credit, please. The idea is like the combat wombat. And it's like a really, like I picture it like, I don't know if you've ever seen like Gears of War.
Yeah.
They're really buff guys in like this kind of like
comically
armor.
So.
Yeah, like comically so. They're, huge guns or whatever with chainsaws and stuff and all this armor. And I'm just like, imagine that kind of built massive frame, but it's a wombat. And it's the combat wombat.
The combat wombat. Australia's secret super weapon.
Yeah, it'd be like a comic book, but it's like kind of comedic, but also kind of awesome.
That is 100% awesome. I love that.
Thanks, man. So, yeah, if anybody's an artist and wants to make it come to life for me.
Yeah. We'll change our album artwork to feature the combat wombat. That can be our new logo.
I will start a dedicated combat wombat podcast.
That's amazing. Oh, that's so good. Oh my word.
Yeah. That's cool. My dream. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of torn between a platypus and a wombat.
Yeah. Oh man, wombats. Did you get many wombats in Victoria? I don't know. Sort of. Do you get many down there?
When I lived on the farm, yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
You kind of had to, like, if you're ever walking at night, you had to be careful. Oh, not so much in the paddocks, but like at the edge of the paddocks or like in the bush, you had to be really careful because you could fall into a wombat hole.
Yeah.
And
They were real.
Yeah, they're huge, and they're like, and wombats they're pretty territorial too. Like if you get in their hole, like, and you know, we had the dogs and stuff, and they were trained to chase rabbits. But if you saw them going to like towards a hole that looked a bit bigger than a rabbit hole, you're like, no, turn around, come back, because they won't come back out of that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. 100%, yeah. It was the same because when I lived on a farm growing up as well, heaps of wombat holes everywhere. And they used to get the mange. Did they get the mange when you were on the farm?
Mange? What do you mean, mange?
So it's like a skin disease where their skin would start like rotting and their fur would start matting. And it over time it makes them blind and eventually it kills them. A horrible disease.
I didn't know about that. If they did, they might have. I don't know. I didn't know about that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, wombats. I like wombats, but I've almost hit them in my car so many times growing up because they would just wander across the road, and where I used to live was really foggy, so it would get real foggy, and then you'd have to be like real careful. When I was dating Karina, I almost got hit while we were driving along late at night. Thought it was like a plastic bag or something like that, and I just swerved at the last second. It was this huge wombat because they get big, man. They're huge. They're huge, absolute units.
Like, they're heavy. They're thick, I guess, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
I have two friends who have hit wombats in their cars. Both times, the wombat walked away, and the car was a write-off.
Yep.
Both times.
Yep. It's like hitting a boulder.
Yeah. So there you go, American friends. If you ever come to Australia, watch. Wombats are cute. You can look at them, but don't mess with them. There's a reason I have that idea for a combat wombat, right?
I believe that there used to be a giant wombat.
Oh yeah, like in the
diprotodon, meaning two forward teeth. It's an extinct marsupial native to Australia, and it was the largest marsupial to ever have existed.
The largest combat wombat.
This is, bro, that would be so awesome. Like you have like the little wombats, but then you have the big wombats. They're like the heavy mamas.
With the huge fangs or whatever those ones.
Yeah.
Oh my
Because
goodness.
this guy, so the diprotodon was the size of a hippopotamus.
Oh my goodness.
Weighing 2.79 kilograms. It's 2.79 thousand kilograms. Sorry.
Okay, there you go. I was like,
sorry,
bro, my cat weighs more than that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're 6.6 feet or 2 meters tall at the shoulder and weighing almost 3,000 kilos. Huge.
Epic.
Bro, we got to make this happen. This is like the new Blinky Bill. The combat wombat. Okay.
Oh my goodness. Well, you guys thought you were getting a Burn the Haystack episode, but instead you got the first of the combat wombat series. Okay.
It was a long day out in the Nullarbor. The sun was shining brightly down.
Are there wombats in the Nullarbor? Okay, no, we're going to get too distracted if we keep talking about this.
Probably not, but I don't know. Who knows? Anyway.
Yep.
All right.
What
cool.
are we, like 20 minutes into the episode? Okay.
Yes. This is the content that people want from Burn the Haystack. This is what's gonna prevent us from burning out, is this ridiculousness. Okay.
That's true. Every time we put out a poll, people have always said, nope, keep the banter. We love it. All right. Into the serious stuff.
Yes. So we are reviewing r/ex-Adventist. And we're just basically going to be picking on a couple of posts from that I've kind of cherry picked from the subreddit. Some of them kind of serious, some of them not so much. But I thought it would be fun to start with a few silly ones. Since we're in a silly mood, we've got the afternoon sillies. But this one post comes to us from, let's see, who is the original post? It doesn't matter.
Just before we get into it, I should say, just a quick disclaimer. It should be obvious, but we're not saying we necessarily agree with these posts.
Right.
Or promoting the idea of being an ex-Adventist, obviously. We're Adventist. Yep. We love being Adventist. But we thought there was some valuable I guess, stuff to be learnt from looking at some of the reasons that people have left and learning from them, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. Cool.
In a nutshell. Yeah. So should have been
100%.
obvious, but, sometimes you got to give a disclaimer.
Definitely. No, that's good to do. That's good to do.
Cool.
Yeah. So the original poster for this post says, the title is, "Was anybody else told that you could not sin in space?"
What?
And the post goes...
What?
And the post goes like this. "When I was in the 7th grade, I had a teacher in my private SDA school, K-12, that taught us you could not sin in space. That Satan is confined to this planet so that when you leave the planet, he can no longer tempt you. She said there were reports from astronauts that as soon as they left the Earth, they felt so light and pure, and all they wanted to do was talk about God. This is obviously not true, but I wonder where she got the idea from and if anybody else was ever taught this."
That is fascinating. I have never heard that. I mean, okay,
Yeah.
I've heard of, like, if there were aliens, that they would be sinless because Satan's only on this planet.
Yeah.
I think Ellen White.
So you
writes
could
something
see the
about that.
connection between those two lines of thought, right? I guess.
I guess I can see. Strangely enough, I can see how they got to that idea. But yeah, I've never heard it so direct. I don't think. Wow.
Yeah. One of the comments for this particular post said that my mother, born in 1931, was convinced in the 1960s that man would never be able to actually set foot on the moon because God would never allow a sinful man to escape the earth for, I'm assuming, the same sort of reasons, right? Which is kind of a little bit strange considering, well, I mean, like we have. So I guess that theory is kind of out the window unless we never went to the moon. Nah, jokes. All right.
Don't start me. Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
But yeah. No. To answer your question, to answer the OP's question, no, I was never taught anything like this. But I can see how they would have come to this conclusion, or this teacher may have come to this conclusion based on the whole, if there are aliens out there, they must be sinless because of that whole Ellen White thing. So.
Yeah. I mean, it does present a lot of interesting ideas. I mean, if that astronaut thing, it would be interesting to see if there were any cases like that. Like if they, I've never looked into it. I might look into it, but yeah, just to see if there were astronauts who felt like, I don't know, when they left Earth, they left. I guess you could maybe feel like you've left a lot of your problems, especially probably people who've just left with the SpaceX launch. They've probably left at a time when Earth's going through some stuff, so they're probably feeling like, man, it's probably nice to take a break from all that. But I'm sure they care about their families and all that. So obviously, it doesn't.
Yeah,
interesting,
definitely. Yeah. When you were a kid, Josh, were you taught anything sort of weird like that, like along those same lines, or something else entirely? Like, what's something that maybe you were taught as a kid that now you can look back and go, wow, that was ridiculous. I don't know why anybody ever believed that.
Not that I can think of. I mean, I remember a teacher telling me that if I swore, I'd go to hell, like straight to hell, which.
Like right that moment.
Yeah, that's what she made it sound like. I'm sure she didn't mean it like that, but that was in grade 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
You're a
was
little sweary boy back in grade 2.
I don't think so. I don't know.
Maybe it was like a deterrent.
Yeah, or maybe I said something that sounded like, I don't know. Maybe I did. I don't know.
Right.
I was a pretty big rat bag from like grades 1 to 3, kindergarten to grade 3.
Yeah.
Anyway. So, yeah, I did get a lot of trouble. So maybe I did. I don't know. But so I'm sorry, teacher, if you are ever listening to this and I made trouble. But yeah, I remember her telling me that, and that actually stuck with me for a long time. And then eventually, I did swear that I was a bit older, and I was like, oh, nothing happened. Yeah,
Yeah.
So
That's so funny.
That was weird. I think that was a pretty weird thing for a teacher to say, especially at an Adventist school. I don't know. It doesn't seem to. I mean, I'm not promoting swearing or anything. I'm just saying.
No.
It was a weird thing to say. Like it had nothing to do with salvation. Anyway.
Yeah. It's like if you don't eat your vegetables, then the big bad wolf is going to come and eat you or something like that.
Did you get told that one? Is that
what? No, what? Quick, let me get my broccoli.
Yeah, what about you? Did you get taught anything strange like that?
I did. I think we all did. And of course, not all of it got internalized, but I'm sure some of it kind of works itself out in some weird ways. I remember some guy, I don't know if he ever got around to like your churches when you were a kid, because we're about the same age, but he used to do these paleontology dinosaur sort of exhibitions, and he would like go into your church and he would show you all these bones of different dinosaurs and stuff like that. And then he'd show like pictures of like Adam and Eve riding on velociraptors and things like that.
Epic.
Like perfectly in harmony with dinosaurs, and then the tragedy of all the dinosaurs dying in the worldwide flood and all that sort of thing. I don't know if that's necessarily accurate, but as a kid, I loved it. I thought it was awesome. And I guess the only other thing was growing up showing the great controversy, like videos of, like people talking about how, war in heaven happened. And I remember watching one video where it was war in heaven, but it was like Star Wars. So it was like angels fighting demons with lightsabers and things like that.
Epic.
Except they were the most terrible lightsabers you'd ever seen.
Oh, less epic. But
it was great. It was great though.
I mean, okay, wait. If Adam and Eve were supposed to be like 9 foot, right? I think according to
yeah,
something
like that.
So would velociraptors be too small for them to ride?
Wow.
Maybe
true.
They would have just gone all the way to the top dog, riding T-Rex.
Dang, that would have been awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty
Who
sick.
knows? Or riding no, they wouldn't ride a stegosaurus. That would be maybe a tyrannosaurus. No, what's the one? Triceratops. That's it.
Triceratops, yeah.
That'd be a cool one to ride.
Bro, I can't wait for heaven.
Ooh.
Riding on Triceratops, man.
Good times.
Saddle up, cowboy. Dinosaur boy.
Actually, I remember seeing in this is another random thing. I wasn't necessarily taught this, but I remember it was like a comic book explaining the end times.
Oh,
do you remember that one? I'm sure.
Yeah.
And I remember
somebody will tell us what that is in the comments. I can't remember.
If you guys can remember, I can't remember what it's called. It was actually really cool, and I would still say I probably understood the end times according to the Adventist beliefs very clearly because of that comic.
Right.
So, yeah, but I remember they had this thing about like in heaven, or not. I think it was either on the new earth or maybe in heaven. I'm not sure, but like if you surf, the waves would never break. So like you could be constantly surfing through waves that never break. And I'm like, it's a pretty cool concept. Like,
yeah.
I'm into
Whoever wrote that is like a total surfy.
Oh, yeah. It was awesome. I was like, I'm keen at it. Because at the time I used to like bodyboard heaps. I wanted to get to surfing, but I never did. But anyway.
That's awesome.
Cool. Yeah. All right. That was fun.
Cool.
Yeah. What else have we got? I want to see what else have you prepared for us, Jesse?
Something I prepared earlier. This next post comes to us. It says just fun Adventist things. So this poster, original poster says, what are some of the things that are like total Adventist things that are totally like difficult to break free from? So like,
oh, okay. So like even though they're ex-Adventist, they're still
yeah. So see if we can add any to this list, but I'll just rattle off a couple if you like. So being way too into conspiracy theories.
Yeah. I have interacted with a few ex-Adventists, and yes, they are still very much into conspiracy theories.
There you go.
Yeah,
proof is in the pudding. This next one resonates with me really well. Not being able to dance if my life depended on it. I definitely resonate with that.
I mean, cannot dance at all.
I cannot dance either.
Yeah.
I don't know. What is it with dancing? Because, like, here's the thing. Okay, this is one of those things, like maybe like alcohol. Like, in the Bible, dancing is often portrayed as both being negative in some sense and also positive in another sense. I would say probably more positive than negative, but I'm not a Bible theologian, so don't quote me on that. But for some reason, like, we've taken on this whole thing that dancing is evil, or like dancing will lead to sex, and that's a bad thing.
I would say there is definitely some dancing that I'm okay staying away from.
Oh,
You know what
totally.
I mean?
Totally.
Yeah. But
Fortnite dancing? What? Okay.
yeah, what about
When I see kids
what about
doing
TikTok
that-
dancers? You know, where do they
Bro,
fall now?
When I see kids doing those, I just want to. It just makes me mad.
You just want to join in? Oh, okay. Okay.
Totally. No, I don't know what it is. I don't know. It's so funny. But to this day, I think even if I even if I was to stop being an Adventist, which I'm not going to, but even if I was, I still don't think that I would be able to dance. Like, I've tried. I'm married to an Islander, man. They have this dance called the Sega. It's amazing. It's very I don't know. I think it's a little bit sexual, but they get into it, and it's like this cultural dance. And there are many other cultures in the world that, like, you know, their dances are like part of who they are as a culture.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
You know? But I just cannot bring myself to do it, even though I have no rational reason why. I'm just not good at it. I don't like doing it. It makes me feel weird, and I can't do it. I just can't do it.
Interesting.
I'm broken, man. Okay, anyway.
Okay. What else?
Next on the list of things you can't get over, above average camping skills.
Oh my goodness.
Josh, the best Pathfinder in the world, right?
No, I was never. I mean, I was a Pathfinder for 2 months and I quit because I was just really bad at it. So this does not resonate. I understand. I mean, okay, again, my friends who are ex-Adventist, on the weekend, they go camping. And everybody's always like, man, how do you know how to do all this stuff so well? I hear it all the time.
Yep.
Nothing to do with me, obviously, because I'm not doing it, but true.
Other people are saying this.
Yes, about other people.
About other people.
Yes. The Pathfinder skills.
Yeah. I had a friend who was like one of those too cool for school sort of teenagers, like totally not, you know, like this is just so lame. But she would always say that she reckoned that Pathfinders was established to help kids know what to do when the end times came, so that when we had to go into the bush, into the caves, into the wilderness, that we would be able to handle it. We would be like totally prepared.
I think that is actually part of it. I think that is part of the origin of it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. But again, I'm no Pathfinder expert.
Somebody tell us in the comments, is that the true origin of Pathfinders? I want to know. Next on the list is random cravings for veggie meat. I don't know, is that true for everybody?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't grow up with veggie meat, but now since I've had it more, I actually randomly will crave it sometimes.
I do get some cravings for nuttolene from time to time. I do quite like nuttolene.
Nuttolene's pretty good, man. I mean, the first couple of times you have it, it's always like, what is this? But then after that, you just get used to it. It's good.
Nuttolene seems to be the most divisive of the veggie meats. Like, I think most people can probably jive with nut meat because I guess maybe it has that more meaty texture, perhaps, especially if you fry it. But nuttolene is kind of more slimy. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a bit different. Yeah, I don't know. I definitely prefer nuttolene over nut meat personally. I find nut meat a bit too overpowering.
Okay, interesting.
Whatever I put it in, all I can taste is the nut meat.
Sure.
I don't think it's bad. I'm saying I prefer. I don't want to get any hate in the comments, you know?
My mum used to cube up a bunch of nuttolene and put it in pasta and things like that. Mwah. Bit of nuttolene, some cheese. Oh, amazing. Just
Fun.
Amazing. Yeah.
All right, should we crack on?
Okay, next one is obsession with Halloween to make up for lost time.
Oh my goodness.
I can kind of get this, maybe, but I don't really care too much about Halloween. Not because of the Adventist thing, but because it's so American, and I kind of have a little bit of a distaste for that.
Yeah, we're in a bit of a different boat there, I think.
Yeah. No. Cool. Next is unconsciously avoiding pork and seafood or indulging in them whenever possible, but no in between.
Yeah. I will say, okay, the few times I have dwelled in ex-Adventist to look at some things, it was just an abundance of photos of them eating bacon. And I'm kind of thinking to myself, like, is that it? Is that the reason? Like, it's not very, like...
It's like mum and dad told me not to listen to rock and roll, and so I'm going to turn myself into a member of KISS or something like that with the hair and makeup. Like, I'm going to totally go overboard because my parents told me not to. Like, that kind of seems like that's part of the psyche a little bit.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to yeah, I don't know. It's hard to understand, I guess. Some ways it's easy to understand, and then in other ways it's really hard to understand.
Yeah. Sort of in relation to what we've already talked about is kind of rereading Harry Potter as an act of pure rebellion. Which I think Harry Potter hatred is kind of different in different flavors of Adventism. I know of a lot of, like, especially younger kids today whose parents don't really have as much of an issue with it anymore. But I remember it being very strong growing up.
Yeah.
I've never read the books.
There was a huge campaign at my school because I think we had the first book in my school for a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden or maybe that first one or two book, I don't know. Anyway, it was at my school library, I think, and I was at an Adventist school. I think I don't know. I'm struggling to remember, but I remember the principal then made this huge campaign, got the book out of the school, and then he made this campaign to get the books out of all the Adventist schools in Australia.
My goodness.
Yeah, he like the principal of my school. I'm pretty sure he was the guy who. Maybe I'm not sure.
Yeah, I remember all the tracts and the little pamphlets that they would hand out about witchcraft and infecting your home and Satan's influence and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, was it I don't know. Anyway, but I remember I'm sure it started in Sydney.
Okay.
When I was in Sydney going, and they just wiped. But it's interesting now, like talking to a bunch of people my age, because like our age group is like the Harry Potter fans, because like we grew
millennials.
like the same age as
Star
as
Wars,
Potter, pretty much,
Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter.
Yeah. And like so many of them, because their parents banned it, they read the books.
Absolutely.
And so there's a lot of Harry Potter fans in Adventism now because of the huge push against it, which I find kind of funny.
It is kind of funny. I guess it's kind of like that whole thing of like, don't think about an elephant. And that just makes you you think about it even more, you know?
I don't know. So I found it interesting.
I will say I have never read the books because I don't really want to, but I have seen the movies and as an adult, and I thought they were okay. Maybe not amazing, but I thought they were okay. I guess I kind of missed out on watching them as a child, which watching especially the first couple of movies, it's pretty obvious, okay, this is aimed at kids. Kind of missed out. So, oh well, it is what it is. So I'm going to bundle these next three, the last three, into one because I think they all go together. The last three are never completely getting over your paranoia of an eventual apocalypse and the end of the world as you know it, paired with a hard-to-shake victim complex and repressed mental health issues.
Wow, those are pretty deep, actually, compared to all the rest of this
They get, like, super deep, like they jump straight off the dive board, like, towards the very end. I think they kind of all go together in a way. That whole idea of paranoia, the whole victim complex, and the repressed mental health issues, I think is definitely a hallmark of a certain flavor of Adventism. For better, well, I would say for better or for worse, but it's pretty much for worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm going to say like Adventists, I don't think Adventists are the only ones who have that like paranoia over an apocalypse. I'd say that's
Definitely
actually
not.
a pretty universal. Well, maybe not universal, but it's definitely well beyond just It's definitely well beyond just Christianity. Like remember 2012, like and the end of the Mayan calendar or whatever. Like everybody was on that craze. That wasn't an Adventist thing. In fact, the Adventists were probably the people who were like, no, this isn't how it ends. You know. So it's tough because you can't, like, okay, all three of those, you could definitely say your previous religious beliefs played a part in them. Mm-hmm. But could you necessarily blame them 100% on that? I don't know.
I think that a lot of Adventist pastors, Adventist administrators, if they don't outright refute the conspiracy theorists and the apocalypse predictors, I think over the years we have allowed them the space to have that voice, and we haven't necessarily refuted them, which I think is in some ways an affirmation or an acknowledgement that they might be right. So I think that in staying silent on some of these issues, like predicting the world, like there's a I'm not going to say his name, evangelist, Adventist, quote unquote evangelist, Adventist evangelist, who has predicted that the world will end in 2027. So that's the latest soft date setting. But this has happened all throughout. I thought the world was going to end in 2000. Then we all thought the world was going to end in 2012. I had a
Now I'm going to be surprised if we make it through 2020, to be honest. But
bro, worst year so far.
Oh man. Anyway.
You know, I had a Sabbath school teacher who told me that the world was going to end by 2014. Yeah, so I mean, we're always going to do this as long as we continue to allow people to continue setting dates, to continue hyperventilating over every time the Pope sneezes, to continue spreading misinformation, the whole victim complex, the paranoia, and the mental health issues. And this does cause some serious mental health issues in people. That's just going to continue. Sad as it may be, but that's just the nature of the beast. No pun intended.
Yeah. Nice. I will say something interesting. I've read a lot of stuff about people leaving churches and having big mental issues from it. And I will say I am really grateful, and I don't know what this person's experience with Adventism was like, but I've seen a massive push in the last close to 10 years, if not 10 years, of like pushing mental health care from the church, and providing really great resources. It's not perfect, but I think the church, at least in Australia and New Zealand, I've seen them taking massive strides into mental health care, and I don't know, like I think it's been really cool to see, and like our health message now has a huge incorporation of mental health and doing things for your mental health. So I think that's like really cool that the church is learning from its past, and it'd be interesting to see like these sort of posts, people claiming they have mental health issues from their time in church. And I'm not saying it's not true, but it'd be interesting to see them, if they could see what the church was doing now, and the way it's trying to do its best to provide care for people and to promote mental health within our church. I think it'd be really interesting to hear their opinion about it. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's great. We got a long way to go, but I think we are making strides. That's a hopeful message. Thank you, Josh.
No problem.
Okay, so let's move on, I think.
Yep.
Unless there's anything else. Cool.
Good.
Moving on to a post called "Anyone Else Feeling Like This Religion Has Robbed Them of a Normal Childhood?"
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty messed up. So the poster says this: I remember growing up as an SDA and also attended public school, so I was in between two different worlds as a kid. Saturday mornings always had the best cartoons, truth. And I always remember being sad that I always missed out, especially since DVRs weren't huge at the time. I remember Saturdays were always extremely boring. Kids were into sports at my school, but I was never able to be on any of the teams because games happened to be on Fridays and Saturdays. When you get to high school, playing on a sports team is a good way to socialize, find a group, but your chances of making a team at a tryout against kids who are playing in youth leagues since grade school is pretty slim. In many ways, with how strict it was, I felt like I had no way to have my own identity. Certain styles of clothing and piercings were banned, and music was always looked at as evil unless it was Christian. When Christian music, a lot of the time, was really half-assed with much lower levels of production. Even the listenable ones like Hillsong were banned due to the use of drums. I low-key think about how my childhood would have been better if I had grown up in a home that had nothing to do with this wacky religion, not having to be the odd one out all the time.
Wow.
I definitely resonate with this one. I don't know about you, Josh. I know you had a much more tumultuous childhood probably than I did. Mine was fairly straight down the center. It was kind of, this is how it was the whole time. Coming from a fairly conservative family, we kind of didn't change that much. We were kind of always the same. But I resonate with this. I loved cricket as a kid. I was never able to join any teams because they always played on Saturdays. I was homeschooled, so I even had less socialization than this kid did. The most socialization I had was at church, Pathfinder events, our homeschool group, which was populated with kids even weirder than I was. So I don't know. I remember the whole Sabbath thing as well, like waiting for the sun to set so that we could turn the TV on to watch our Saturday night movies. That was how it was. Here's a funny thing. I had a friend who was a bit older than me, a couple of years older than me, and he was able to listen to, you remember Wow Hits?
Oh yeah, solid.
The best Christian music from like the early 2000s or 90s. But my parents were not okay with that stuff because, again, it had drums and all that sort of thing in it, and they weren't okay with any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I would get my friend who had Wow Hits to burn me copies of the CDs, which I would then play.
CDs. Oh, bro. Snap. Bring me back. All right.
And I would play them in secret. And I had this whole set of Wow Hits 2001, 2002, 2003 that my parents weren't aware of because I would put my headphones on and I would be under my sheets. No, I probably wouldn't be under my sheets, but I like, you know,
that was what it was like. Your act of rebellion was listening to worship music. You know what I mean? Like, and that was you rebelling. Like, I'm listening to church music. Like, that's wow.
Music about Jesus. Suck it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, like, to be honest, I don't really resonate with this one personally.
Okay.
I mean, I was never really into sports, so for me, you know, not being able to play Saturday sports, it was never a big deal. And I always really enjoyed Sabbath, even though I would spend a lot of time at church, like pretty much 9 to 5 because my mum was a pastor.
Yeah.
But I always enjoyed it. I had good friends. I had good stuff to do. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I never felt too restricted in the things I wanted to do because of my faith. I don't know. Yeah. Like,
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, just being honest, like I'm really sad that this person feels like this, but yeah, I don't personally resonate with it.
No, that's cool. Yeah, and I guess that's the thing. Everybody's experiences are different.
Yeah. I had a lot of friends who they had that same sort of opinion of Sabbath though. Like they would just be hanging out for the sun to set. Like they were just like, man, I just can't stand it. Or they would dread when sun sets on Friday because they're like, oh no, it's Sabbath. We have to just sit at home and do nothing. But yeah, I don't know. We didn't like Sabbath for us was always really fun. Like we always had, like I always really enjoyed it because it was like, oh, good. I don't have to do any homework. I don't have to go to school. Like I get to go to church. Like I always really, Sabbath was pitted as a really fun time for me. But
to be fair, you're also a glass half full kind of guy. So
I guess so. Yeah,
it's part of it.
Yeah, sometimes. Sometimes I can be a bit. Yeah, but yeah, I think this is. And again, I'm not a parent yet, so I can't really comment on it. But growing up, I always saw like there's a huge difference in like families who they did whatever they could to make Sabbath really fun and enjoyable for their kids, and then families who they were just like super hard line, and their kids, I don't know, they didn't really make it. I don't know. You could tell their kids didn't enjoy it, I guess, and their kids dreaded Sabbath, and that carried over. Like whenever they had their own chance to do something like to keep Sabbath themselves, it was like, I would do anything to not keep Sabbath is what they were thinking. Like you see them when they first go to Avondale or something and they're just like, yes, just like break loose. And and I was like, it's sad to me that that's how they see it. Whereas for me, it was always like a gift. I mean, I went through my own time of learning and growing up in it and recreating it for myself. But I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, that's good. And I think it's good to grapple with these things. Yeah. Josh, do you want to read the next one? Lonely After Leaving.
Sure, I can do that. Cool. So the next one, do I have to say who the original poster is?
Oh, I haven't been.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's just like some random username. So
okay, yeah. I can't even actually read that. All right. So this person says they are lonely after leaving and that they are a 19-year-old male, I think. My whole life revolved around, they call it an archaic cult. All my family, friends, and enemies are Adventist. I've only been to Adventist schools and feel so isolated from the average person. It's so angering realizing how many friendships I ruined with secular friends because I could not participate in regular activities or entertainment of the weekend. My heart aches when I see all of my close friends are still participating in the culture and debating fairy tales with one another. How do I overcome this loneliness and build a new social circle given my past with this?
I love how he mentions that all his friends, family, and enemies are Adventist.
Yeah, what the heck?
I don't know. When I read this, I feel like this guy is definitely red pilling a little bit when it comes to separating himself. I mean, he's pretty open. He calls it a cult, and I've seen this argument many times online whether Adventism can be classified as a Christian religion or if it's a cult or whatever the case may be.
Anyway, that's another just a conversation.
Yeah,
gets me a little bit riled up, but I'm like, nope, this is what this is about. I mean, I definitely don't agree. I guess all I'll say right now is I definitely don't agree with classing Adventism as a cult. I think that is wrong.
I don't either. I would say that Adventism is I think 95% of Adventism is mainline Protestant, and then there's a 5% that has cultish vibes, but I think that 5% is not the majority of Adventists, and the behavior that revolves around that 5% is not bought in by most Adventists. But I can see how people would call it a cult. Yeah. I think is why I'm allowing that 5% margin. I can understand why people would think of it that way. This is something that I think is very interesting, and it kind of piggybacks off the previous post about the guy missing out on other activities because of the religious affiliation and everything that goes along with it. I do wonder, and this is kind of like an interesting thought experiment maybe you want to think about, if you are Adventist, how many of your friends are not? And what would happen if you decided to leave the church? Would you still have a support network? On the one hand, it feels like this guy's kind of burnt all of his bridges. That's the vibe that it kind of gives off now. And I know that not everybody would do that, like, completely cut ties with everybody who is an Adventist. But I do think it's interesting if we're meant to be people who are in the world, making contact with people, having relationships with people who don't think like us, whether it's for the sake of evangelism or whether it's the sake of our own personal growth, how many of our friends and our close associates think like us, talk like us, believe the same things as us? Yeah, it might be an interesting thought experiment for you to think about. And what does that say about, who you are as a person?
Yeah, I mean, I've always personally thought there was huge value in having friends who saw the world differently. And I always I think I've talked about before how it's a bit of a struggle when you're a pastor moving to a new place because all your connections are only that of the church, which isn't bad. I love my church, but it's hard to meet people outside of your church when, that's all you're doing. And it can be a little bit dangerous because then all your contacts are just in that same mindset. It can become a little bit unhealthy because you get that echo chamber experience. I don't know. This is why personally, with church, I try and I don't want people's entire time to be filled up with just doing stuff with other church members or just doing church stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, be the church all the time, but I don't know. I try and keep church-based activities a bit lower so that people have more time to engage in a hobby that they enjoy with other people. You know what I mean? Join social circles. I don't know. I think that's really important. And you can see here, this person just feels so lonely now that they've left. And that's not that I want them to leave or anything, but it's sad that they feel like that, that they're probably already spiraling a little bit. And unfortunately, if people have disowned them because they're not an Adventist anymore, that is not okay.
Not okay at all.
No, you have to love and nurture people like through their journey, and people are, there are going to be, like, we all have freedom of choice, and there are going to be people who choose to leave, and your love shouldn't be conditional on them being an Adventist. Sure, if the relationship gets toxic or whatever and they get toxic, there's probably some space for space between them.
But you can be toxic and believe everything, and be toxic true. And believe nothing.
Yeah, very true. Very good point. But like, it's sad that, I get so sad when I read these experiences, because I'm like, man, we should be better at loving people, you know?
I agree. I mean, and at the end of the day, it's Jesus' words himself that says, how are people going to know that you belong to me, that you are my disciples? It's through your love. I personally would love to see a church where this young guy could say, you know what? I don't believe any of the stuff anymore. I don't think that I'm an Adventist anymore. And instead of kicking him out, we would be like, okay, you're still welcome here. We're still going to love you. Nothing's changed. If you want to work out your stuff, then that's fine. If you want to work out outside the church, we'll continue to support you. We're not going to cut ties. I don't know how much of this is him cutting ties, how much of is them cutting ties.
Yeah.
There's so many unknowns, but that's what I hope for. That's what I hope that people can come to, where, you know, you could be an atheist, being part of a community of Adventists, and that would be totally fine. You know?
Yeah.
That would be my dream.
Yeah, like, what's the thing about how the order should be that, the classical order with church is that you believe, you behave, and then you belong. Yep. Whereas, like, the real order should be you belong, and then if you believe, then we'll encourage you to behave differently. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, that's when we expect your behavior to change. But even if it doesn't, you still belong.
Yeah.
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 Like, that's... It seems so simple, you know?
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think we have time for one more if we get through it. This is from a young woman. The title is, Today I Finally Decided Not to Be an Adventist Anymore. And her story goes like this. Today I finally decided to stop carrying around all this guilt and shame with me. To stop being scared of being judged by the absolutely ridiculous rules, to stop caring about my family trying to pressure me to go back to church, and to stop feeling so scared about the judgy little undertones in their voices. I went to the shops today on Saturday and bought myself my first piece of jewelry, a ring, and went out with my friends afterwards and had a lovely cocktail. I decided to stop hiding who I am for the fear of being gossiped about. They claim to be full of love, and all they do is spend time gossiping about what sister is sinning in what way. I don't know if anyone else was a conservative Adventist, but it seems like it's a holiness competition. I grew up moderate Adventist, and then I got super extreme around age 20 and 21, wearing skirts that basically clean the sidewalk when I walked.
It's worded so funny, sorry.
That's a funny way to say it. Eating only the strictest vegan diet, 2 meals a day. And by the way, 2 meals a day because I think that's what Ellen White did. So that's the reason that people do that. No vinegar, no mustards. Again, a suggestion from Ellen White. I cut out spices due to the risk of irritating my stomach lining. Same thing. Went to bed at 8 p.m. every night and woke up at 4 a.m. to 5 a.m. to do 2 hours of Bible study.
Wow.
I went on, pretty insane. Went on mission trips to convert the heathens, got deeply involved in an even worse kind of Adventist group that were completely bonkers. How did I have such luck as to find them? Do you want to comment, or do you want me to keep going?
No, keep going. Yeah, this is
All
interesting.
Right. She goes on to say, my mental health was off the charts. I would cry nonstop for hours about how sinful I was and how hopeless I felt that no matter how hard I'd cry, nothing ever seemed to change for me. I never got over all these horrific sins that I was struggling with. It tore up my mental health. I was always pleading in my head constantly for God to help me in such deep desperation, always on the verge of tears. It was so unhealthy. I realized how hypocritical all the people in the conservative groups were. They were doing all the things that they told us. They were doing all the exact things they told us was a sin to do. Dating, dressing, eating. Left that group at age 21 and slowly started losing my belief bit by bit. Glad I didn't have to attend all-night prayer sessions anymore and that I didn't have to spend my weekends cooking for brothers in my God-given role as a woman. I was glad to get rid of all the judging and gossiping sisters. I found myself an amazing, moral, non-Adventist, non-Christian boyfriend at age 23. He was kinder than all the men I had ever met at church. I stopped going to church, I moved far away from home, and I'm the happiest and healthiest that I've ever been mentally. I remember when what I wanted the most was to stay at home, to be a stay-at-home wife. Now I'm an engineer at a huge multinational company and not some slave. This morning I woke up and decided that I'm not ashamed of who I am anymore and that I wouldn't hide the transition I've made anymore. I feel like a new person and I can't wait to embrace who I truly am, to start making myself happy and to stop pleasing others. I refuse to feel like I'm doing something wrong. I feel so unburdened and free.
Wow. Man. Like, oh, there's so much to unpack there. I don't even know.
Yeah.
You know, like, and by the way, this is posted 6 months ago, guys. This is not like a 20-year-old post. This is 6 months ago that this sort of thing is still happening in our church.
Yeah.
Like,
So I'm assuming she's probably 23, 24 at the time, maybe, you know. So this is like just a few years ago. This is not like 1997 or whatever.
a few years ago.
So she got her first non-Christian boyfriend at age 23. Now she's an engineer. So It might be a couple of years on from that. It might be a year. Who knows? She doesn't say.
I mean, it was posted 6 months ago and it says, today I finally decided to stop being an Adventist anymore. Oh, but I guess we don't know where that... Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the point is it's pretty recent, the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I think just hearing about, you know, the gossiping sisters and like her being so restricted and carrying, like being on the verge of tears every day, that just breaks my heart, you know? That's not, it's not, I don't know.
You know what this story reminds me of? It reminds me of The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh my goodness, you're so right. Yep.
Like, this is what The Handmaid's Tale is actually building towards. Like, this is sort of the stepping stone to get to that dystopian future.
Well, you know, she even political and other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But this is the picture. Like, this is how that ends up happening, if it ends up happening, which I hope it never does. But like, she even talks about stuff like, you know, women being a subservient in the kitchen, all that sort of stuff, which ironically is a deeply Calvinist sort of take on the woman's role, which is totally against what most traditional or mainline Adventists should believe. I say should.
Both of us are actually the cooks of our households.
That is true.
Comically enough. We're both also pastors, yeah. Anyway.
I just find it so... I mean, I went out to the shops today on Saturday, bought myself my first piece of jewelry, which is a ring. It's not even a necklace. It's a ring, which is the most, you know, adorable sort of thing to wear. And then she went and had a cocktail. And I'm imagining that to most people who are not Christians or Adventists, that would probably sound like the most mundane thing in the world, which I guess is what makes it so crazy. That to an Adventist, if you are an Adventist and if you tend to be more right side of center, that would probably come off as being very, very not okay.
Yeah.
So
it's just like, it's almost like, to me, like she left an Adventism that, to me, it's like it's not even the same Adventist experience I've had. Parts of it, I guess, yeah, but
yeah,
like,
Yep. No, look, I had limited contact with people like this when I was growing up, but I think luckily my parents were wise enough to not fully invest their time and effort into these people. Sadly, and I'm going to make a big assumption here. I'm going to assume she's American because most of the people in this subreddit are Americans. sadly, I think this is probably more of an American thing. However, it is present in Australia and New Zealand and the rest of the world for that matter. But I think that a lot of this is very Americanized. I guess it just feels so sad that anybody would ever get to this point. And I wonder, and there's no way to know this, but I wonder how many people are involved in these groups and are having the same exact struggles that she is. Is everybody having like a collective, what's the cognitive dissonance? Like, you know, we're all acting the same way because we know we think it's the right thing to do, even if everything in our being grinds against that. Like, oh man, that's rough if that's true.
And to hear like how she was like, and the leaders are being hypocrites, and I'm like, oh, that's the worst, eh? Like, her leaders are telling her to do stuff that not to do stuff that they're doing, and that just makes it all so. It's like a whole nother layer of burden to wear. Like, like it sounds bad. I'm happy that she is now in a much better place mentally, and she feels like healthier. You know, like I'm sad that our church did that. I mean, I don't even feel like it was our church in a way. It feels like an offshoot of our church that did that.
Well, she does.
But it's hard to say. Yeah.
She mentions that there's another group that she was involved with. She doesn't name them, but you can probably think of one or two groups that fit the description.
Yes. But at the same time, like, I'm happy that she's healthier, but it's just like, man, why? Like, how do we build communities that don't make people feel like this? How do we build communities that, I don't know, actually encourage people to feel like they're living their best and healthiest life?
Yeah.
No, not to feel like it. How do we make communities where people are living their best and healthiest, you know?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, like, I don't know, like mental, physical health, everything. Like how do we, where they don't feel isolated in it, and if they have struggles, they can talk about it. Yeah. And it's okay. It's so hard. So I'm moving my laptop around a lot, but yeah. Yeah. There's so many questions this brings up, and so many things I want to tackle, and but I don't. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, I think one of the parts of this discussion is that awkward tension that we find ourselves in, because we don't have the answers to all of this, but I think it is our duty to look at this and to be uncomfortable. And if you're listening to what we're saying and you're uncomfortable, I think that's the right reaction. And I think that discomfort should force us to have these discussions about what's appropriate, what's inappropriate, about our tradition. What are some of the things that we need to start working on seriously, like seriously? And what do we do with these uncomfortable parts of our tradition? And it's not something that I think Josh and I can just tell you, because, you know, everybody's different. Everybody comes from a different place, and we're all exposed to different flavors of Adventism. There is not one uniform answer to what is Adventism. But I think that knowing what we know, and look, these are the stories that you're not going to hear in church because they're not good for the church. It's not good for the church for these stories to be told. These stories all paint the church in a mostly negative light. But these stories exist for a reason. And I think giving light to these stories, it's not us, as we said at the beginning, it's not us, you know, denigrating the church or talking about how much we hate it, because we don't. We love the church, and we want to see the church be all that it can be, and we want to see people be all that they can be. But I think without these stories, we are unable to face the sometimes ugly reality of humanity trying to figure this out and not always getting it right. And that's an ugly reality we all have to face in ourselves, and we have to face as a community. So, yeah. Anything you would add to that, Josh?
I guess it is important to hear these stories. You know, like, some people might get upset at us for sharing these stories, I don't know, and sharing things like this, but we need to hear them. We can't just sweep them under the rug and pretend everything's okay, because in a lot of places there's a lot of struggles going. I mean, even in our own churches, there are people who are struggling, and what can you do to love them more, to make them feel, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
What can these stories teach you? Not like, how can these stories fuel you to be angry against the church? That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to say, what can we learn from these stories to grow and be better and help people in better ways? Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm just repeating what you said, but anyway.
No, not at all. I think, look, honestly, I think this is the last thing that I want to say. We don't like to listen to these stories. We like to listen to the conversion stories, the stories that paint the church and God in a great light, and these stories don't. But I think listening is important, not trying to talk over people or to tell them, oh, well, you should have done this, or you should have done that, or you should have just not thought this or not thought that, and you should have just not put up with this or whatever. I think there is power in listening and hearing people, empathizing with them, even if you think they may, have made mistakes and are partly to blame. And I'm not saying that any of these people are to blame for the situations they found themselves in, but I just think that the more that we can listen and not try and overrule them with our own logic or our own, trying to find the right answer, which is so counterintuitive to an Adventist. We just want to find the right answer, and we always want to figure it out, and we want to make it all work together. But I think just sitting and listening can be the most powerful thing that we can do. And I think that's why these stories are so powerful. Yeah.
So true. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think maybe we'll leave it there. We'd love to hear your feedback, everyone, on this. We'd love to know your thoughts on some of these stories, and I don't know, maybe if you think we need to do more of this, there's heaps more that we could dig into. We just chose a few, but Jesse was the curator today, and so I definitely learned a lot from this episode. So I hope you guys did too, and we'd love to hear feedback on all of it. So the best place to find all things Burn the Haystack is, of course, burnthehaystack.org. Make sure you go there. It's got links to all our social media and even a contact form and our blog, our beautiful, beautiful blog.
Yeah. And if you want to wear Burn the Haystack wherever you go, spread the gospel, that is saving the best and burning the rest, you can buy our merch also on our website. If you want to hear more, just hit that subscribe button, smash that subscribe button, whether you're on a podcatching app or whether you're on YouTube. And if you want to help us out, leave a review on the podcatching app of your choice.
Yeah, totally. We love you guys. Stay awesome. That is Josh and Jesse out.
Sweet.
Cool.
Zoom just randomly broke for me. I don't know why.
What randomly broke?
Zoom.
Oh.
Yeah. So that last 10 minutes or so, I'm not sure if we're going to get that in the video, but I'll see how it...